Crochet seam looks like a sequence of chains on one side and short straight stitches on the other side. And it's widely used in commercial knitting. Here is another example. Again, a chain of stitches on one side. And on the other side, a sequence of small straight stitches. Like this one. This technique can be used to make a seam on the wrong side of the work. It is very easy to undo, and if you don't want to undo it all the way, you can stop and place a marker into a loop like this. And the marker will act as a stopper, preventing the seam from further unraveling. I'm holding my sample with the right side in, and I will seam the edges. I insert my hook under both loops of my edge stitches. Grab the yarn for seaming and pull it through, making a loop. And then again, insert my hook under both edge stitches. Pull the yarn through and pull that loop through the first loop. Repeat under both edge stitches. Grab the yarn, pull through and through the stitch on my hook. Under both edge stitches. Grab the yarn, pull through and through the stitch on my hook. Under the edge stitches, pull my yarn through and through the stitch on my hook. Here it's important to make sure that I don't split my yarn, and also I do not grab any other stitch, just the edge stitches. So when I turn my work inside out or the right side out, the seam looks neat. To seam this sample, I'm using the same yarn as for the sample itself. This yarn is quite thick, and so the seam will be rather bulky. And for a finer, more elegant look, it's better to use a finer yarn of the same color. I'm close to the end of my seam, and I'm working my last stitches, making sure I grab the right stitch on both edges. Pull my yarn through and through the stitch on my hook, and it's finished. This seam is quite elastic and stretchy, and it looks like a chain on one side and a sequence of straight stitches on the other side. Here I turned my sample the right side out so that you can see how the seamed area looks like on the right side. This is the seam hiding between the two columns of the knit stitches. Again, if using the yarn of the same thickness as for the sample, the seam may be rather bulky, so I would rather use a finer yarn. Like in this example, I'm joining the two bound off edges. I'm holding these two pieces the right side out, and in this case I will make a visible seam on the right side for a chunky look. These samples were bound off using a chain bound off method, so I insert my hook under both stitches of the finished edges. Grab the yarn and pull it through the stitch on my hook. Under both stitches, grab the yarn and pull it through the stitch on my hook. This is the chain on one side, and you can also see that my yarn for the seaming is much finer than the main yarn used for the sample. And on the other side, it's a sequence of short straight stitches, but they are much less bulky than in the previous sample. So this kind of chain seam can be used as a design element. This is another example. I used a contrasting colored yarn for the seam, and the contrasting colored yarn can be used to create an interesting chunky decorative visible seam. And it adds an interesting contrast. I hope you liked this video, and I'll see you in the next one.